Right now, the Detroit Lions are clearly at a crossroads with the running back position, and it all starts with the reality surrounding David Montgomery. We all love Monty, there's no sugarcoating that. He embodies toughness, reliability, and that physical identity Dan Campbell wants. But the direction Brad Holmes hinted at during his recent press conference makes one thing very clear. The Lions are thinking strategically about the future, the salary cap, and how to allocate resources where they matter most. And that's where the possibility of trading David Montgomery comes into play. From a cap perspective, this move isn't random. The Lions currently sit 21st in the NFL in cap space, and moving Montgomery would free up roughly $5 million. That's not pocket change when you consider the young core this team needs to lock up. Players like Sam Laporta, Jack Campbell, and Brian Branch aren't optional investments. They're priorities. The front office is pinching every dollar for a reason, and running back is one of the few positions where you can replace production without breaking the bank. If a trade happens, the expectation is realistic, not fantasy. Teams around the league would still value Montgomery, especially contenders looking for a physical presence. A fourth-round pick or a third-round pick with conditions, depending on team and division, is the general range being discussed. That's the type of return that makes sense and aligns with how Brad Holmes operates. It's not about winning headlines, it's about value. So the big question becomes simple. How do the Lions replace what Montgomery brings without compromising their identity? The answer seems to come in two paths: free agency or the draft, and neither path involves spending big money. On the free agent side, the names being discussed fit a very specific mold. Najee Harris is one of them, a big, physical back who fits the downhill, north-south style Detroit loves. He dealt with injuries last season, which lowers his market value, but that's exactly why he becomes interesting. The projection is a contract just under $3 million, largely because of injury concerns and the current state of the running back market. At 27 years old, Harris still fits a short-term window. And while there's risk, the cap savings align perfectly with what the Lions are trying to do. Another free agent option is Kenneth Gainwell. He's not a flashy name, and he's not meant to be. At 5'9", 200 pounds, he's a compact, physical runner who profiles strictly as a number 2. His production last season tells the story: 114 carries, 537 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a 4.7 yards per carry average. That efficiency matters. When you compare that to Montgomery's 4.5 yards per carry, the drop-off isn't dramatic. Contract-wise, you're talking about a one-year deal around $7 million, or potentially a short 2-year deal if the Lions want flexibility. At 26 years old, Gainwell still has productive football ahead of him without locking the team into long-term money. But even with those options, everything points to the draft being the preferred route. The Lions are not expected to spend a first or second-round pick on a running back, and even early third seems unlikely. The sweet spot is late third into the middle rounds, depending on how the board falls and whether Brad Holmes decides to move picks around like he's done before. That's where names like Katron Allen enter the conversation. Out of Penn State, he's a true bowling ball runner at 217 pounds. He's not tall, but he's built to punish defenders. His production speaks loudly: 210 carries, 1,133 yards, 15 touchdowns, and an impressive 6.2 yards per carry. This is the kind of back who runs through contact and never stops churning his legs. He has Dan Campbell written all over him. The only hesitation is draft investment. Do the Lions want to spend a late third or early fourth on a running back when there are other needs? That's the debate inside the building. Another draft option comes a bit later and brings a different body type. Mike Washington out of Arkansas stands at 6'2", 233 pounds. He's a senior with a projection between rounds 4 and 6. His numbers are strong: 167 carries, 1,070 yards, 8 touchdowns, and a 6.4 average. This is a true north-south runner, a guy you trust on 3rd and 1 without hesitation. Hand him the ball, move the chains, simple football. He profiles cleanly as a number 2 back in Detroit's system and fits the physical blueprint perfectly. Then there's the late round or undrafted route, which Brad Holmes has proven time and time again he can make work. Tyrion Stewart out of Virginia Tech fits that mold. At 5'9", 222 pounds, he's not about flash or big stat lines. He's about power, grit, and discipline. Only 82 carries last season, 469 yards, and a 5.7 average, largely due to limited usage and injuries around him. But as a 7th round or undrafted option, this is exactly the kind of player the Lions have found success with before. If the team prioritizes other positions early, taking a late shot here makes sense. All of this circles back to one clear theme: power. The Lions want to run the ball down your throat, dominate in the fourth quarter, and impose their will. That doesn't change even if David Montgomery is no longer on the roster. Whether it's a modest free agent signing or a mid-to-late round rookie, the identity stays intact. This team isn't looking for a superstar replacement. It's looking for a complementary hammer next to Jahmyr Gibbs. That's the direction things are pointing. And now it's on the front office to decide which path gives them the best balance of production, cost, and long-term flexibility. With that in mind, what do you think about this approach to replacing David Montgomery, and which direction would you feel most confident in if you were running the Lions? Because when you really zoom out and look at this situation, it becomes less about individual names and more about how the Lions are shaping the next phase of this roster. Trading David Montgomery, if it happens, is not an emotional decision. It's a calculated one. The Lions know exactly who they are, and they're confident enough in their system to believe they can plug in the right type of running back and keep the machine moving. What stands out immediately is how consistent the profile is across every option being discussed. Whether it's Najee Harris, Kenneth Gainwell, Kaytron Allen, Mike Washington, or Tyrion Stewart, the theme never changes. These are downhill runners. These are backs who don't dance, don't hesitate, and don't rely on finesse. The Lions are not trying to replace Montgomery with a carbon copy, but they are absolutely trying to replace the role he plays. That role is simple: punish defenses, control tempo, and close games when everyone in the stadium knows the run is coming. The front office clearly understands that Jahmyr Gibbs is not meant to shoulder that burden alone. Gibbs is explosive, dynamic, and deadly in space, but the Lions don't want him taking unnecessary punishment between the tackles every week. That's why the number 2 back matters so much in this offense. It's not a luxury, it's a requirement for how this team wants to play football. The cap situation keeps looming over every decision. Freeing up around $5 million by moving Montgomery isn't just about this season, it's about protecting the core for years to come. Sam Laporta, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, these are foundational pieces. The Lions would rather spend responsibly at running back and make sure those extensions get done than overpay at one of the most replaceable positions in the league. That mindset reflects maturity from a front office that's no longer rebuilding, but sustaining success.
If the Lions go the free agent route, it's clearly short-term and cost-controlled. Najee Harris would come with risk due to injury, but also with a clear understanding of his role. Kenneth Gainwell would be a steady, reliable option who doesn't demand touches but delivers efficiency. Neither move would compromise flexibility. Both will allow Detroit to pivot again if needed. If the Lions go through the draft, the upside is even clearer. Kaytron Allen brings early down power and attitude. Mike Washington brings size and chain-moving consistency. Tyrion Stewart brings low-cost depth and developmental potential. None of these options force the Lions to abandon their plans at other positions like edge, safety, tight end, or offensive line. That balance matters, especially for a team that believes it can win multiple ways. And that's really the biggest takeaway here. The Lions aren't panicking. They're not scrambling. They're calmly evaluating how to maximize value while staying true to their identity. This is what a confident organization looks like. They trust their coaching staff, their offensive line, and their culture enough to believe that the next man up can succeed if he fits the mold. So now it becomes a waiting game. Does a trade materialize? Does the market develop the way Brad Holmes expects? Do they strike in free agency or stay patient until the draft? However it plays out, the direction is clear, and the logic behind it is hard to argue with, because even after laying all of that out, there's another layer to this conversation that Lions fans can't ignore. This isn't just about finding a body to line up behind Jared Goff. This is about how Detroit is redefining roster construction now that expectations are real and the window is open. Every move Brad Holmes makes now is judged through a different lens, and the Montgomery situation is a perfect example of that shift. In past years, the Lions might have clung to a proven veteran out of fear of regression. This version of the Lions doesn't operate that way. They trust their offensive line. They trust their scheme. And most importantly, they trust that physicality is something you can teach and demand, not something that belongs to one player only. That belief is why moving on from a productive, respected player like David Montgomery can even be on the table. It also tells you how much confidence there is internally in the run-blocking unit. This offensive line has shown it can elevate running backs. That matters when you're evaluating mid-round rookies or budget-free agents. Detroit isn't looking for someone to create on their own every snap. They're looking for someone who hits the hole decisively, finishes runs, protects the football, and embraces contact. If you do those things in this offense, you will produce. Another detail that quietly reinforces this direction is how the Lions are prioritizing flexibility. Short contracts, late draft capital, low-risk investments. All of it points to optionality. If a drafted back pops, great. If not, they haven't crippled future drafts. If a free agent works out, they can extend him cheaply. If not, they move on. This is smart team building, especially at a position where careers are short and wear and tear is unavoidable. And let's be honest, the Lions don't need a star in that role. They need reliability. They need someone who can carry the ball 12 to 15 times when the game script demands it and still lower his shoulder in the fourth quarter. They need someone defenses don't want to tackle when it's cold, late, and physical. Every single option discussed fits that description in some form. That's why this conversation isn't about panic or loss. It's about transition. If David Montgomery is traded, it will sting emotionally, but it will also confirm that the Lions are fully committed to building sustainably. This team isn't trying to win one season. They're trying to stay at the top. Now the real intrigue is watching how patient Brad Holmes decides to be. Does he wait for the draft board to fall perfectly? Does he strike early if value presents itself? Or does he let competition play out in camp with a mix of youth and low-cost veterans? That answer will tell us a lot about how confident the front office truly is in what they've built. Because even after all of that, there's still one unavoidable reality Lions fans have to sit with. This decision will ultimately test how much everyone truly believes in the vision Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have built. Moving on from a player like David Montgomery isn't just a football move, it's a statement. It says the Lions believe the system is bigger than any one contributor, no matter how respected or productive that contributor has been. And that belief didn't come out of nowhere. This coaching staff has spent years drilling one idea into this roster: toughness travels, physicality wins, and effort is non-negotiable. When you view the running back position through that lens, the names start to matter less than the traits. That's why every replacement option discussed fits the same profile. No hesitation, no finesse-first mentality, just decisive, violent, north-south football. Another important layer here is how this affects the offense structurally. The Lions don't need to change play calling if Montgomery is gone. They don't need to reinvent their identity. The run concepts stay the same. The philosophy stays the same. That continuity is huge, especially for an offense that thrives on rhythm and balance. Whoever steps into that number 2 role is stepping into a clearly defined job with clear expectations. That makes the transition smoother than most fans might expect. There's also something telling in how little urgency there seems to be from the organization. There's no desperation, no reach, no talk of overpaying to replace Montgomery. That calm approach reflects confidence in internal evaluation and development. It reflects a belief that competition will naturally elevate the best option, whether that's a free agent, a mid-round rookie, or even a late-round surprise that nobody outside the building is talking about yet. And let's not ignore the broader roster implications. Saving money at running back creates freedom elsewhere. It gives the Lions leverage when extension talks come up. It gives them insurance if injuries hit other position groups. It allows them to stay aggressive without being reckless. These are the kinds of quiet advantages that don't show up in highlight reels but absolutely show up in January football. At the end of the day, this situation perfectly captures where the Lions are as an organization right now. They're not clinging to the past. They're not chasing names. They're building with intention. If David Montgomery remains, it's because the value aligns. If he's traded, it's because the plan was already in place. Either way, the Lions are operating from a position of strength because there's still one more angle that deserves attention, and it's the way this potential move reshapes how opposing defenses prepare for Detroit. When Montgomery is on the field, defenses know what's coming, and they still struggle to stop it. The key point is that the Lions believe that threat doesn't disappear with one roster change. They believe the offensive line, the scheme, and the mindset are what force defenses to play honest football. That confidence comes from years of consistency. This team wins in the trenches. It wins on first and second down. It wins by staying ahead of the chains and dictating tempo. As long as the replacement back understands his assignment and embraces contact, the offense doesn't lose its edge. That's why the Lions aren't chasing versatility or highlight potential for that role. They already have that with Jahmyr Gibbs. What they want next to him is stability and force. It's also important to understand how this affects game flow. The Lions want to shorten games when needed. They want to lean on teams late. They want fourth quarters where the defense knows the run is coming and still can't get off the field. That formula doesn't require a high-priced running back. It requires commitment.